you about a person, a friend of mine who has made an incredible difference in my life. His name, you may have heard of him, he was fairly famous, is Abraham Lincoln. And old Abe, as I like to call him, we were tight. He was born in February of 1809. February the 12th, actually. Yeah, that's close to President's Day. Anyway, February 12th, 1809. Now, unfortunately, he passed away of fairly tragic circumstances in April of 1865. But did you know Abraham was the 16th president of the United States? He was from Illinois. He successfully led the country through the greatest, well, you could, I don't know, make an argument for this, but what was probably the greatest internal crisis, certainly that our nation had faced up until that time, the American Civil War. Let's see, what else can I tell you about my friend Abe? You guys know about Abe, right? Y'all studied about old Abe in the history book. What do we remember about old Abe? No, he didn't chop down the cherry tree. That was somebody else. Let's see. He was reared in a poor family, raised in the western frontier. Now, the western frontier in those days was like Illinois. Wasn't quite as far west as we might think today. He was mostly self-educated. Became a country lawyer. Ran for the state legislature in Illinois and won that. He was a one-term member of the United States House of Representatives, but he ran for Senate a couple of times and lost both times. They say he was, well, yeah, he was an affectionate husband, father of 4 children. In fact, I didn't know this about him. He fell in love. Once. His first romantic interest was a lady by the name of Anne Rutledge, whom he met when he first moved to New Salem in 1835. And they dated a good while. They courted back in those days. They courted one another and sort of had this informal agreement that they would probably get married. But she had an ex-boyfriend or a former interest. And so she wanted to advise that fella. It says she wanted to talk to him before she, well, she had to break it off with him before she could marry Abe. And she, in the process of doing that, before she was able to marry Mr. Lincoln, she died of typhoid fever. And so it's tragic. He fell in love again, met a lady, actually I don't know that he fell in love, but he met a lady, Mary Owen, in Kentucky. He was visiting his sister, and she set him up. That's how that worked in those days. And they were interested in one another for a good while, but then it kind of got to be where his career just sort of took over, and he wrote her a letter from his law practice in Springfield suggesting that he might not blame her if she ended the relationship. Now that's sort of a way of saying, I think it's over, hon. And she never replied, and so the courtship was over. Finally, he did meet another lady, Mary Todd, who became his wife. They got married, had 4 children. But only one lived until adulthood. 2 of his boys died in childhood, and another one died after Abe died, but at paddling at age 18. So, did you guys know that about my friend Abe? Yes. Well, it's all true. I got it off of Wikipedia, so count on it. Okay, what's my point? Did I know Abraham Lincoln? Do you know Abraham Lincoln? I know a lot about Abe Lincoln, and I can find out more. That's just one article. Man, the Wikipedia article is like 35 pages. This is just 2 that I printed off. I want to read you a story from the book of Luke. should have read this together a few weeks ago. After Jesus' resurrection, okay? Jesus has died, buried, raised again. A few people have seen. On that same day, 2 disciples were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. They were talking with each other about everything that had happened. As they talked and discussed these things with each other, Jesus himself came up and walked along with them, but they were kept from recognizing him. He asked them, "What are you discussing together as you walk along the road?" Well, they stood still, their faces downcast. One of them, named Cleopas, asked him, "Are you only a visitor to Jerusalem and don't know the things that have just happened in these days?" Of course, they meet a guy, they don't recognize him. In fact, they think he's a gardener, and he asks them, "What are y'all talking about?" They're kind of blown away because they say, "Do you not know what's just happened? Jesus has just been crucified, gone to the cross, been buried, and that's been a big deal in town. Everybody should know that." "What things?" he asked, playing dumb, "What about Jesus of Nazareth?" they replied. "He was a prophet, powerful in word and deed before God and all the people. The chief priests and our rulers handed him over to be sentenced to death. They crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. What's more, it is the 3rd day since all this took place." In addition, some of our women amazed us. They went to the tomb early this morning. They didn't find his body. They came and told us that they'd seen a vision of angels who said that he was alive. Some of our companions went to the tomb, found it just as the women had said, but they did not see. Jesus said to them, "How foolish you are, and how slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Did not the Christ, or the Messiah, have to suffer these things, and then enter into his glory?" And beginning with Moses and the prophets, he explained to them what was said in the Scriptures concerning himself. Now, they still don't realize that they're talking to Jesus, do they? They think they're talking to some stranger. All right? Here's a thought that I had after thinking about this verse, or this story. Here these folks are, these disciples. They know a whole lot about Jesus, don't they? They know a whole lot about him. In fact, they can talk about him pretty knowledgeably. They know he's from Nazareth. They know he's a prophet. They know he's powerful in word and deed. They know he died and was buried, and his tomb is empty. They know all the facts. But Jesus is standing there, right there in front of them, and they don't know. They don't realize it. Now, I think there must have been something with his resurrection body that he looked so different. He looked similar, but he looked so different that they, even though they should have recognized him, maybe there was something different about his body. And I can't tell you exactly what that must have been. But a little bit later, as they talk a little bit more, and they have a meal together, and at the table, when Jesus starts talking, and it says he was at the table with them, he took bread, gave thanks, and broke it, and gave it to them, and then their eyes were open, and they recognized him, and then he disappeared. So they do eventually realize that it's Jesus. Okay? But here's my thought. You guys know a whole lot about Jesus. Most of you guys have grown up going to church. You're here at RCA where you have Bible classes every day. We've been reading through the New Testament. We've read all about Jesus, first quarter. We know a lot about Jesus. But do you know Jesus?